never faze me. They watch the steps that I be taking. That's why they say that I'm amazing. Been the top dog before the nonsense. I've always been a public figure. Now the frame didn't got too big cause more people wanna get up in it.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is the show. I'm excited for today's episode. I got back from an epic trip that I took with a couple friends to Pebble Beach. It was on the list for a long time. I just saw a video from my wife that she sent too, which was we had a vision board back in the day, and we had a bunch of baby stuff because we were trying to have a baby, which we now have. And we also had pamphlets from Pebble Beach because at one point we took that drive through and took a picture, me and my wife. And at the time I couldn't afford to play this golf course. It was like $500. It wasn't just that. If you're a golfer, you know that if you don't stay on the hotel premises in all those courses there, then you can't get on the course really. And so it wasn't just about the $500. It was the fact, you had to stay in the hotel and do all that stuff. And so it just wasn't in my reality 11 years ago. And so what my wife would do would save up on my birthdays. She would essentially gift me gift cards. And so for about 3 years, every birthday or, on a special occasion, there was 3 gift cards that I saved. And when I got to this Pebble Beach trip, I essentially had $1,250 in gift certificates. And so they still worked. And it just reminded me of the journey that I took 11 years ago, this symbology of like wanting to have a life that would allow me to go do some of the things that I've wanted to do. Because something as simple as that, to a lot of you listening to this or some people they have these bucket list items or items that they don't think that they could ever experience. And that was not my mindset back then. It wasn't something that I would never experience. It was just a matter of when. Right. And I didn't know that, it would take me 10 full years or 11 years from the first gift card, because I had the cards and I had the dates, right? It was like 11 years of a lot of stuff going on in my life to get me to the point where ultimately it was a good decision to go on this golf trip. But one of the things we did is we used a private jet service to take me and 2 of my friends down there. And so Scottsdale has this jet service. It's amazing. And so we hop on the plane, and I've been a Kanye fan for a long time. And so anybody who knows any of the songs that Kanye sings, there's a song that he essentially says, "Have you ever popped champagne on a plane?" And that song I would play over and over again, and I would have this vision of like flying private and popping champagne. And so I've obviously flown private, probably a half dozen times now. And every time I do fly private, it's like I want to pop champagne and have a good time on the plane. And so we did that, and then we get to Pebble. We have an epic trip. And before we took off, though, the returning flight, we got an email notification that said that there was going to be no returning flight with that jet service. And so what we had to do is we had to, at the last minute, switch plans and then take a 5 a.m. flight out of Monterey, California, and take us back to Scottsdale. And so we had to essentially go through a commercial airline. And so when you contrast the joy and the ease and the fun and the efficiency of flying private, where you literally get there 10 minutes before, that you literally just walk through the doors and they put your, bags on a golf cart, and then they grab you a coffee, and then ultimately you get on the golf cart and they just take you to the plane, and you walk up to the plane and you sit down and you enjoy the experience. Contrast that with a commercial flight where you got to get to the airport at call it 90 minutes before the flight takes off, and then you gotta hope that there's not long lines for ticketing, and then you gotta hope that security is nice and smooth. And for me, I've been too lazy to do the pre-check thing, so I gotta take off my shoes, I gotta take out some airports you gotta take off your shoes, some more airports you don't have to take off your shoes. I have to take out all of my electronics, my iPad, my computer, I gotta lay it in different bins, and then you gotta sit down, wait for your flight, and the experience is more difficult, right? And I think anybody who has experienced the contrast of private flight and a commercial flight, you have this huge contrast of the enjoyment of the experience, the efficiency of the experience, but ultimately the destination is the same. I got from Scottsdale to Monterey, California private, and I also got from Monterey to Scottsdale back commercial, and both trips were safe, and I reached my destination in both cases. Now, the difference is very different in how you experience getting to that destination. So I was thinking about that, and somebody asked me in the gym the other day what I thought about 75 hard. And we caught this on camera, and so I essentially posted it on, 3 different channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And there was a lot of people saying, "Oh, thank you for saying that, that was awesome." And then there was a lot of people that were, pissed off and yelling at me in my DMs, telling me that I don't understand 75 hard because it's not a fitness program, it's a mental toughness program. And I'm like, believe me, guys, like I understand the point. I understand how it feels to do something hard in your life and come out the other end a victor. I understand well, because I've had to do hard shit multiple times in my life. I've had to overcome a lot of obstacles. I had to go from not playing high school football to trying to grind it out and make a collegiate team and get my ass kicked every single day, wanting to quit every single day. I had to walk on to the University of Utah in the same fashion, battling this desire to quit and not show up dozens of days and showing up anyways, and ultimately seeing it through to a Fiesta Bowl champion run with a great collegiate career. I broke my leg at the end of my college career, and instead of getting $1 million signing bonus, I get a $5,000 tryout to the Oakland Raiders. And I'm the longest shot on the squad, and I still make opening day roster. Like, believe me, I know what it feels like to do hard shit, right? And even if you didn't have to do what I just did, every single person listening or watching me on film right now, life is difficult enough. And I know you feel me on this. If you're building a business and you have to show up every day, and when things are not going great, you still show up, and you show up for everybody else, and you show up for your family, and you show up for your employees, and you show the fuck up all the time. Like, you feel me that you don't have to get to the NFL to understand that life is already difficult in many cases, right? And so my take on the 75 hard program is like, I understand it, but it doesn't make any sense to me, where if I have this trip and I go to, this golf trip, and it's within the 75 days, and part of the 75 hard program is like, you can't drink a sip of alcohol. And it's like, I don't struggle with alcohol, but I am going to have champagne on a plane. And if I do that, it's like, I then have to wrestle with this idea that I might not be mentally tough, and I failed this mental toughness challenge, and I have to start over again. When in actuality, it has no bearing on how I walk around and how I can be in elite shape without that pass or fail mentality. And so I don't like the pass or fail mentality when it comes to fitness. And so the real thing that I don't like about certain, and it's not just 75 hard, it's 6-week challenges, it's like it's all these things where a person feels the need to challenge themselves, to prove to themselves that they could essentially do something for a certain amount of time, that not necessarily thinking about wanting to do it forever, right? And that's my biggest gripe, because here's the deeper rooted issue with some of this stuff. Everybody, you, me, everybody around you, they have this intrinsic desire to be the hero in their own story. But what do heroes need? Heroes need a villain. Heroes need a fight. Heroes need adversity. Heroes need a challenge. Heroes need hardship, right? Because everybody loves a fucking underdog. Everybody loves the John Madsen underdog story. But when I'm walking around driving a Lamborghini and I have this, huge medallion with diamonds on it, it's like I'm not necessarily the underdog anymore. And there's a little bit of shift in the lovability of now going from a complete underdog that's just had to grind for 11 years, that couldn't afford Pebble Beach, had a wife that had to give gift certificates to I ultimately made it. It's like, that's a hero's journey type of story, right? And every movie you watch, me and my daughter was just watching Lion King last night. Every story that you read, they're all about a hero. And if you think about all the stories, the same format, heroes have a villain, there's hardship, there's difficulty, there's adversity, there's problems, and then bam, you come through and you're the fucking hero, right? And the problem with that, though, is that's a subconscious program that a lot of you are still running. And I had to really get help here. Because when things are going good, what happens is this desire to be the hero kicks in, and then unconsciously you place hardship, you place adversity, you place unneeded villains into your story just so you can overcome them, so that you can prove to yourself that you're the hero of your own story. And so if you can imagine how destructive that might be in your business, if you can imagine how destructive that might be in your relationships, if you could imagine how destructive that could be in your fitness. You see, the way that we do fitness at Suprahuman, and you've seen all the ridiculous transformations. We don't believe in this rigid approach. The way we get guys and girls dialed in is working out 3 to 4 times a week for an hour. This is what I do. We make sure that we're moderately active. We teach a flexible dieting approach through understanding macronutrient targets, so that a person actually does and then learns how to manipulate variables for the rest of their life, so that if they go pop champagne on a plane, it's all good. You can still have the 6-pack, you can still have the beach body, you can still get an immaculate result. And what happens is when a person goes through the process and they actually get the result, guess what? They're just as mentally tough as people who had to make it more difficult than it needed to be. I promise you, when you go from soft and mediocre to an absolute savage, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you're going to be 100% more mentally tough than when you were looking at yourself as a soft individual. And what you had to do to get there, right, ultimately isn't going to matter that much. And so the whole point here is that when it comes to fitness especially, there's a much more efficient way of doing fitness to get to your ultimate destination. Now, most of my clients, they're not competing on stage trying to win bodybuilding contests. Most of my clients are not caring about, deadlifting 600, 700 pounds and winning powerlifting meets. Most of my clients are people that are 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, and even 60 years old that are successful in their life, and they're looking for a way to efficiently look, feel, and perform like they did, even better than they did when they were 25 years old. And my answer to that is not making them do things that are just going to make it more difficult just so that they can prove to themselves that they're the hero. I'm going to show them that they're the hero by flying private. I'm going to show them that there's an easier way to get their ultimate result that's not going to take away from their business, that's not going to take away from their family, that they can ultimately do this thing in a way that they can do it for the rest of their life, and people's jaws will drop when they see them after not seeing them for a while, because they'll be like, what the fuck did you do? And they'll be like, man, I did this thing and it actually wasn't that hard. Can you imagine saying that? Some people have to prove to themselves how much they feel worthy, how much they feel deserving by being the hero. And like I said before, a hero needs a villain, a hero needs a fight, a hero needs a challenge. And what I want to challenge you today on is, where in your life are you unconsciously placing unnecessary challenges, unnecessary difficulty, unnecessary villains in your life, in your business, in your relationships, and in your fitness? And where in your life could you get the result easier if you just let go of the desire to be the hero of your story? If you like this episode and it hit, please send me a direct message. Let me know what you want me to talk about. Send it to a friend if they need to hear it. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.